Yes, the head of Atomic Energy Organization of Iran yesterday sent a letter to the Director General and informed him that the Natanz nuclear facilities, which is the safeguarded facilities, been attacked during this aggression.
Something changed in the Persian Gulf that nobody was fully ready for. Not the analysts, not the admirals, not the governments watching from thousands of miles away. Something happened in those dark waters that sent a shockwave through every military command center, every intelligence briefing room, and every diplomatic hallway on Earth. And for a few hours, the world held its breath and asked one question. Had Iran actually done it? The us, Abraham Lincoln. 100,000 tons of American steel, nuclear-powered, carrying dozens of fighter jets, thousands of sailors, and enough firepower to overpower most nations on Earth. This is not just a warship. This is a symbol, a floating sign of American power that has sailed the world's oceans for decades without ever being successfully hit by an enemy. Its presence in any region is not accidental. It is a message, a warning. And on this day, it was placed in waters where Iran could see it clearly. Then, the reports came in. Iran had hit it or targeted it or launched something toward it. The exact details were broken, chaotic, contradictory, the way information always is in the first minutes of something terrible. But the word was out, and the word spread faster than any government could control it. If you want to understand why this moment matters, not just what happened, but why it could change everything, stay with us. Because the full story is far more complicated than any headline can carry, and the consequences are still unfolding right now. Before we go deeper, if this kind of analysis is what you come here for, subscribe and hit the notification bell. We break down the stories that shape your world, not with panic, but with clarity. Now, let's get into it. To understand Iran's move, you first have to understand what the Abraham Lincoln stands for beyond its weapons and its hull. Aircraft carriers are America's most powerful geopolitical tool, not just in war, but in the minds of people. When a carrier strike group appears off your coast, it is not an invitation to talk. It is pressure applied with precision. For decades, enemies have understood this, and for decades, no enemy has dared to directly strike one. That unbroken record is itself a weapon. It creates a wall of deterrence, an invisible boundary that says crossing this line means consequences. No nation can survive that. Iran knew this. Iran has always known this, which is exactly why the reports of a strike were so instantly explosive. The situation leading up to this moment had been building for months. Iranian nuclear activity had sped up beyond agreed limits. Iranian-backed proxy forces across Yemen, Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon had been increasing pressure on American allies. The Strait of Hormuz, that narrow passage where 20% of the world's oil moves every single day, had become a place of dangerous naval confrontations, harassment of commercial ships, shadowing of American warships, and drone activity that kept regional commanders on edge. The temperature had been rising steadily, dangerously. Washington responded the way Washington always responds when it wants to send a message without firing a shot. It sent the Lincoln. And then Iran answered that message with one of its own. The first reports described Iranian missile or drone activity aimed toward or near the carrier. Rachel Maddow, one of America's most well-known political journalists, whose name became tied to early coverage of this story, represents exactly the kind of media environment in which these reports moved, fast, wide, and with enormous consequences. Because in the modern information world, the first version of a story is always the most powerful version. It settles into people's minds before the corrections, the explanations, and the details have time to catch up. And the first version of this story was terrifying. American officials, when they began speaking, were careful and measured. They used words like incident and activity and defensive posture. They did not confirm the most frightening version of events, but they also did not deny that something serious had happened. And that careful, strategic silence told its own story. Iranian officials, on the other side, were doing something just as deliberate. They were not rushing to deny the reports. They were letting the uncertainty breathe, letting the world wonder. Because for Iran, being seen as a power that can threaten an American carrier even without proof is itself a form of leverage. Strategic ambiguity is one of Iran's most practiced tools. Say enough to show strength. Leave enough room to step back if the pressure becomes too much. Experts who study Iranian military strategy quickly pointed to a major tension at the center of this story. Iran's whole strategic framework is built around avoiding direct conventional war with the United States. Iran knows the math. A head-to-head military fight with American forces ends one way. So, Iran has spent decades building another approach. Proxies, cyber operations, economic pressure, maritime harassment, nuclear ambiguity, tools that apply pressure without crossing the line into open war. A direct strike on a supercarrier would be a huge break from that doctrine. The kind of break that Iran's top leadership, practical, calculating, deeply aware of consequences, would be extremely reluctant to approve. And yet, the reports existed. The activity was real, and the question of exactly what line had been crossed and how far remained truly unanswered. Analysts at major think tanks and research institutes began putting together the picture from fragments, satellite images, radio intercepts, statements from unnamed officials, and regional intelligence assessments. What appeared was a picture of serious Iranian military activity near American forces. Real danger, real provocation, but with the most catastrophic version of events still unconfirmed. That difference matters enormously because there is a difference between Iran firing at a carrier and missing, Iran launching something as a warning shot meant to fall short, and Iran carrying out aggressive moves that were reported as a strike in the early chaos. Each of those situations carries different meanings, different required responses, and different consequences. But here is what every situation has in common. Each one shows a decision by Iran to escalate, to push harder than before, to signal that it will not simply absorb American pressure without pushing back. And that signal, no matter the exact military details, forces Washington into a position it does not want to be in. Because the United States now faces a choice that has no comfortable answer. Respond with force and risk, starting a regional war that pulls in proxies, allies, oil markets, and possibly nuclear calculations. Or absorb the provocation without a matching military response and watch American deterrence weaken in real time, sending a message to every enemy watching, not just Iran, but China, Russia, North Korea, and others, that the cost of challenging American power is manageable. Neither path is good. Both paths are dangerous, and the pressure to choose is immediate. The global consequences go far beyond military strategy. Oil markets reacted. Analysts who follow energy markets pointed right away to the Strait of Hormuz question. If conflict in the Gulf becomes a serious possibility, prices do not slowly drift upward. They spike. They spike in ways that reach every household that drives a car, pays an energy bill, or buys goods that need fuel to be made and shipped. A Persian Gulf crisis is never just a military story. It is an economic story with global reach. America's allies in the region, Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the Gulf, states that host American bases, are watching and calculating. Their security planning depends on American credibility. Their willingness to stand with Washington depends on their belief that American deterrence is real. An incident that damages that credibility does not just affect American-Iranian relations. It reshapes the entire regional security system. And beneath all of this, there is a human side that the geopolitical framing often hides. There are thousands of young American sailors aboard that carrier. People who joined the Navy for their own reasons, who never imagined they would find themselves at the center of this kind of confrontation. There are people in Iran, ordinary people whose lives have been shaped by decades of sanctions, pressure, and uncertainty, and who have no say in the decisions being made in their name. The machinery of great power competition runs on the lives of ordinary people who never chose to be caught inside it. Researchers who study conflict escalation point to a pattern that should make everyone deeply uncomfortable. Many of history's most devastating wars did not begin with a deliberate choice to go to war. They began with an incident, a miscalculation, one action that the other side could not absorb without responding, one response that triggered a counter-response, a chain of events that built its own momentum until it was beyond the control of the people who started it. The technical term is inadvertent escalation, and the conditions for it in the Persian Gulf right now are more present than they have been in a very long time. Communication channels between Washington and Iran are thin. Trust is basically non-existent. Political pressure at home on both sides pushes toward toughness instead of restraint, and the weapons available to both sides are more capable and more numerous than ever before. The Abraham Lincoln incident, whatever its exact nature, is a window into how fragile the current situation really is. It is a reminder that the gap between a provocation and a catastrophe in this environment is smaller than most people realize or want to believe. What happens next is truly unclear. American decision-makers are weighing options. Iranian leaders are watching for the response. Regional players are calculating their own positions. Intelligence agencies on multiple sides are working overtime to understand what actually happened and what it signals about what comes next. The Abraham Lincoln is still in those waters. The tensions that created this moment have not been solved. The deeper disputes over Iran's nuclear program, over proxy forces, over the Strait of Hormuz, over the bigger question of Iranian power in the Middle East, none of those have been addressed. They are all still there, still alive, still capable of producing the next incident. And the next incident might not leave as much room for ambiguity. This story is not finished, not by a long shot. The chapter that opened in those hours in the Persian Gulf is still being written. And what gets written next in the command centers and diplomatic back channels and intelligence briefings that the public never sees will shape the security of the whole region, the stability of global energy markets, and the credibility of American power for years to come. The world is watching, and it should be, because what happens in those waters does not stay in those waters. Stay with us. Subscribe, because when the next chapter arrives, and it will, you will want to understand it. All of it.